How's everybody doing today? Looking for it. I can't hear anybody, so I'm assuming you're fine.
We're good. I'm good.
Okay, so what I wanted to present on today is a resource that you have available to you, and I shared with you yesterday. So you should have seen the invite for that in your email. If you see anything wrong with it or misspelled or whatever, please let me know because I can update, edit, and change that as needed. Even if there's really cool resources, you're like, this should be included, send me an email. I can edit it and update it. The way this came about was Jimmy, when I was an intern, said, hey, we need a class for high intensive couples. And he handed me a book and he said, base it on this. And so I had no idea, no concept. So I went home and I created something. And this is what I came up with. And when I was doing this before we were online, I actually printed in a spiral book that I hand to the client, as you can kind of see. And I walk them through and I order it through Office Max. And it turned out it was way cheaper to print it like this than it was to hand them a print out every week of the material. And so what I used to do was I would teach this class. It was in the evenings and couples would come in and I would have multiple couples all at the table and we would walk through this material together and it was very effective. But what we found over time was that couples had a hard time getting their schedules to work. Someone was out, someone was in, only one couple would show. So the way I've been using it now is in actual like one-on-one session with the client. It's just as effective, whether there are other couples in the room or not. Although I thought it was great to have them on there, have other couples in the room, because it helped with dialogue and hearing what other couples were going through and kind of hearing perspective. And they had a chance to say, oh yeah, me too. But regardless, the material's been very good. I use it on a regular basis. This is the one I go to. So while I may still use assessment like we do for Prepare and Enrich, or my favorite is Prepare and Enrich is my favorite, or we would do the other one. I can't think of it because I don't do the assessment very often. It's one that Jimmy really used to like, and another one that he had me get certified in.
The Symbis.
Symbis, thank you. And so I use it, but I found that the assessments are really good to sort of help the couple see kind of where they're going from. This tends to be the material that I work from, and I hand them each a book at the beginning and they go. The dilemma with that is when you hand them the book, there is the chance that they're going to go home and not come back. We have the material, now we don't need you. So the way I put this together, and I'll show it to you here in a little bit, is I put it in a folder and each individual chapter is a separate PDF that you can email the client. So they're only going to get that 1 week's worth of material from you at a time, not the entire book. If you print it off in a spiral, absolutely, you run that risk again. But I have sort of figured out that it seems to be worth the risk. They almost always come back. I've had very few take the book and run. And then I've got this one couple that came to me for a few weeks, had some financial stuff, disappeared, came back. They're going some more financial stuff, so they left, and they're planning on coming back again later and finishing it. And they've not lost their book. So I don't know how they're the anomaly. Most people lose their book in that situation, but they have not. Okay, so I want to kind of walk through what this material is, what it's based on, how I use it, and then show you where to find it. At any point you have questions, just speak up. I might not see you raise your hand, but I want you to have a chance to ask questions and see if this is something that you want to use with your clients. Do you have any questions before I start? Anything I need to clarify? We're good? Okay. Okay, so the basic thing of this, the book that's based on, we'll go over here in a second, is a dialectical behavior therapy book for couples, essentially. So it goes over mindfulness skills, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and emotion regulation skills. Super simple as far as that goes. Nothing has changed in that area. DBT with couples, though, is it helps the high conflict couples with out of control emotions, with distress tolerance, and problem solving. And it starts them in kind of baby steps and moves them forward to harder, more complicated problem solving together. The goal of the material is the couple is the client, not the individuals. So it's a little bit different take on how we do this, because most DBT, you're focused on the individual. With this, marriage kind of format, the couple is the client, not the individual. So the tactics and the approach is always done in a way to help increase or improve intimacy within the relationship. And so at any point they're coming to conclusions that cause them to go in opposite directions, you might be on a tangent that this was not intended to do, and it's something to check and to look at closer. How do I present this material? Okay, so the way it's designed is to chapter to chapter in order, one chapter per week, essentially. You don't skip around, you don't jump around, because the skills have a tendency, they build on each other, right? So you start with something simple, it gets more complicated, and then we increase and move on to the next chapter. They need the basic skills at the beginning in order to complete the higher, more complex skills at the end. However, your clients aren't always going to agree with that. They're going to want to jump ahead because this week we're dealing with this, and why are we talking about this thing that I don't need to know because it doesn't apply to me? I've dealt with that quite a bit. When I get that, if I'm identifying, okay, there's a crisis, or there's something that's really, really important that we need to address now, I'm willing to skip ahead. We'll pull the skill out. We'll let them go through it. I almost always get the feedback from one of them going, now this is why we're in therapy. This is why we're here. And it cracks me up because this is the client that really wants to be in control, doesn't want to do the vulnerable stuff. They want to jump to whatever it is that they think is going to fix the problem. And I'll indulge that to a point. But we always go back to where we started and we resume. And then I'll either assign the material or the homework for that chapter for that week, and we pick up right up where we left off the next week. So it requires me being flexible and just sort of paying attention. I do, when doing this, I encourage you to keep it client-centered. So regardless, go at the client's pace. Not everyone is ready or able to do the work when you would like them to. And so while you can urge them, you can't make them. And so that's why I have a tendency to, I'm willing to be flexible, but I do understand that they're not going to be able to do certain skills without these basics. And I'll re-explain that to the client as well. All right. So this is optional. This is something I did within therapy notes. I added high conflict couples material to my interventions list. So when I'm planning on addressing this with a client, I just click on that and I show that as my intervention. Now I could just click DBT skills. The difference here is, and I'm going to talk about it with you, is it's not just DBT. There's a whole lot more to it. It's a lot more comprehensive and it's specialized for the Timothy Center. And I'll walk you through some of that stuff too. Warning. Okay, so I throw this warning on because I've learned this one the hard way. Unfortunately, marriage counseling will very likely not help a marriage with a narcissist and will more than likely aid in the narcissist emotionally abusing the partner. They almost always will weaponize therapy, and they'll say sentences like, even our therapist thinks that you should or you need to. And so I guard against that like crazy. I constantly tell clients, do not weaponize therapy. Do not go home and have arguments that include your therapist's name in it, saying the therapist agrees with your opinion. That will not go well, and it will turn your spouse against therapy. And that works both ways. It keeps the one who has it happening to, it keeps that from happening. And it also tells the narcissist that they can't pull those tricks. It will not fly. And so narcissists have a tendency to see therapy as a game where the goal is to convince the therapist that the fault lies entirely with their partner. So just be looking for those kind of things. This is someone that marriage therapy probably isn't going to be very effective with, unfortunately. All right. One of the things I love to do, and I have found has made it really effective, is to have some measurable markers for how the client sees the marriage, what is the progress that and then the progress they see after. So I have them graded at the beginning, and I don't remember what these all say, but like how confident do you feel in your ability to resolve conflict with your spouse? How would you rate your marriage's health? And I have them pick somewhere on the spectrum. At the end, we then do it again, because quite often the client doesn't even realize what's improved. And sometimes they get to the end and they're like, nothing's improved. I don't know why we did this. This is a big waste of time. Except then they take the assessment and they go, oh, I guess some things have improved. Look at all this that's different. And it really is effective. In the middle of it, I also take a pause. So around week 6, I'm like, okay, we're going to break from the material. And I want you to do another assessment, essentially, like, how do you think these are going? What is it that's happening? Like at this point, what has been helpful? What has not? Because then they're able to even talk to you about it and say, okay, we're not addressing this. And I don't know why we're not talking about this. And, but it gives them, and definitely points out to them that they are in charge of their therapy. I'm simply the facilitator. I bring in resources, I help them with skills, but I cannot do the work for them, and I want them taking ownership. And for whatever reason, doing this type of thing throughout the therapy process makes a huge difference in them being able to see that. Okay, so this is the material that everything was based on. High Conflict Couple, a Dialectical Behavior Therapy Guide to Finding Peace, Intimacy, and Validation by Alan Fruzetti. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I think that's correct. And the material literally follows along with it in order. So in the event that you get a client that is not a Christian, very resistant to anything biblical, just use this book instead. But also what's helpful is sometimes you get that skeptical client who doesn't know if you know what you're talking about. So this is another thing that you can do. You pull alongside and you say, hey, if you don't agree with something I'm saying in this material I'm handing you, and you think I've got it wrong, pull out this book and check it. And it kind of gives them the opportunity to go, okay, they're basing this on something. They didn't just make this up. And it seems to make a huge difference as far as that goes. And I'll have them pull both out side by side and go, okay, what do you think about both of these? And then how does the material differ? So
Vanessa,
the one type, yes.
do you give that to them straight up the start,
Uh-huh.
the book, and then just stuff from you said you should give them worksheets from your material week to week?
So I actually print out the book and I give them the entire book. That's how I've been doing it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now I'm just emailing them chapter to chapter, week to week.
Gotcha. Okay.
I used to do handouts, and it cost us so much money to run all those copies. Like we ended up saving tons by just printing these little spiral books instead of me just using a copy machine. I was surprised. And then maintaining it all and trying to find it all, it just was a lot more easy. It was a lot easier just being in that little spiral.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so how does my material differ from like the original that they can check it against? Every skill has been aligned biblically. So I've gone through the Bible and I found out, okay, what does it align with? Because I get a lot of clients too that come in, they're like, I don't want secular counseling. I've been burned by that before. I want Bible-centric counseling. And part of my goal is to get them away from that black and white thinking anyways. I want them being a little more flexible and being willing to see that there's truth in a lot of other materials out there as well. And I want them to understand that just because it's secular doesn't mean it's wrong. It just might not be the flavor that they prefer. And I want them being able to compare both thoughts at the same time. But they love seeing all the Bible stuff. So I made this very Bible centric. I included lots of references. I talk about concepts they've heard and seen before, videos, music, all kinds of stuff like that. The videos that have been included, some are fun, serious, secular, some biblical. All videos, I will tell you this, need to be viewed by the therapist before you give it to your client so that you can warn them for triggering, or if there's something that doesn't fit their specific sensitivities, values, beliefs. I've been very surprised at what will affect a client that I never saw coming. So that might happen anyways, but just know that I would warn you against check the videos and watch those first so you can warn them if you need to, or tell them disregard this video, you won't want to watch it. Additional resources have also been listed, book referrals and skills that aren't DBT skills, just things that I have found to be effective or another way of looking at. Of course, they're all biblical. So here's some examples of the skills. So wise mind, I put in the whole Psalms 139, 20 through the 24. Dear man, James 4, 2 through 3, turning the mind. So you kind of get the idea. And then I walk them through the Bible verse. Like, how does this fit the skill? So when they're reading this truth, they even understand like how psychoeducational God really is. And that the reasons he tells us to do something isn't just because that's a good thing to do, but because that is taught to us in a way for how we are designed by him that helps us function at our best. They generally don't look at God that way or look at the Bible that way. And so my clients have always responded really well to this whole idea of, oh, okay, God is psychoeducational. Oh, I was wondering if it was going to apply. So some of the videos I include are like the science of happiness. I warn people on that one. I think there's a bad word that gets blipped on it. One of the girls cusses. But one of the guys in there talks about his personal savior, Lord and Jesus Christ and whatever. And so you get some variation in there, and I warn them about that. It's not about the nail. My abuse people who get gaslit a lot by their spouses, I warn them on that one just in case. I think it's a hilarious video. There's not a lot of truth to it, but it's a really funny video that does illustrate one of the points in the material. Brene Brown, Ravi Zacharias, who I absolutely adore. And then this one, I'll let you kind of take a look at it. This is Sheldon and Amy's date night, Big Bang Theory. So one of the sections in the books that talks about how to connect with your spouse by doing the things that are valuable to them, because it causes them to connect with you emotionally. People don't have a tendency to think about their date nights as a way to emotionally connect, and how it can actually improve a relationship. So I include this video, and they always laugh when they see it. So you may have seen this one.
Amy, Amy, Amy.
7 o'clock, right on time.
It's not an accident. I waited outside your door for 20 minutes.
Well, dinner's almost ready.
I must say, I was surprised you chose to spend our date night in your apartment. But as I mentioned, the Pasadena City Council is debating longer crosswalk times. And later, the Lego store is having a Midnight Madness sale. You ask anyone, that's a hot date.
Tempting choices, but I have something special planned for tonight.
What can be more special than having an adequate amount of time to cross the street on your way to buy a tiny Lego Indiana Jones?
With our friends moving forward in their relationships, I've decided that we should make progress in ours as well.
Oh, dear Lord. 2 years ago, we didn't even know each other. And now I'm in your apartment after dark. How much faster can this thing go?
I had a feeling you'd be reluctant, which is why I'm going to dip into my neurobiological bag of tricks.
Oh, you brain monkeys kill me. Dip away.
I've devised an experiment that I believe will increase your feelings for me in an accelerated time frame.
And how do you propose to do that? Hope you're not thinking about some sort of LSD thought control. Because there's only one mind-expanding drug that this man enjoys, and that's called school.
Human beings form emotional attachments as they grow up. In your case, to your mother, superheroes, etc. I'm going to attempt an experiment that will get you to transfer those feelings to me.
Wow, seems what's on the menu tonight is malarkey with a big side of poppycock.
We'll see. Let's start with a little romantic dinner music, shall we?
Super Mario Brothers theme.
Yes.
I see what you're doing. You're attempting to build on the work of Ebbinghaus by triggering an involuntary memory of me playing that game. Admittedly, the happiest 600 hours of my childhood. But it won't work.
Fine. There's no reason we still can't have a lovely dinner. Why don't you have a seat?
Boy.
May I offer you something to drink?
You know I don't drink.
Not even strawberry quick?
I love strawberry quick. It's my favorite pink fluid. Narrowly beating out Pepto-Bismol.
Oh, I know. I think it will go nicely with what I have prepared for dinner.
Spaghetti with little pieces of hot dog cut up in it.
Just like your mommy used to make.
Oh, yummy, yummy. We should do this more often. Uh-oh.
Okay, so the material is loaded with videos like that the couples really tend to gravitate to, especially shows like Big Bang Theory. They almost all love this show. But it makes it fun. It breaks it up. In the material, you'll actually see hyperlinks. When it's sent to them as a PDF, makes it super simple. They just click on it. When it's written in the material, I've given the descriptions, and they can just type it in YouTube and watch the video themselves. Some of the additional skills listed within the material that are not a part of the original material. So one of them, I'm going to cite my husband, was a skill he taught me. Literally, first time I saw him do it was on our first date. I call it reset button. It's the very first skill in the book. So this is something that just works, where essentially you say something like you don't agree with, or is totally wrong, or the emotion isn't even right for the situation, but it flies out of your mouth. You realize that it was wrong. And instead of sticking with it and digging in your heels, you essentially say, you know, what, I don't agree with what I just said. Let me start again. Or I don't know why I said it that way. Let me try over. And I think an example where my husband did in our first date, he was talking about something about kids, and he ends the sentence with, and that's why I hate babies. And I was like, you what? Like, I didn't. And he had to back up and he looks at me and he says, I'm sorry. I don't agree with what I just said. Let me try that again. And then he kind of giggles. And then he told me what he actually was trying to say. It had nothing to do with hating babies at all. He was talking about frustration and helplessness with like small children. He always felt like he had to like hand the infant over to his wife. He could do nothing until they were like 2. And that was all he was communicating, but it came out as I hate babies. And so I teach the skill very first thing in the very beginning because they can predict automatically that they are going to mess it up. They're going to be learning skills. They're going to get it wrong. And if they can make a habit out of learning to just reset and state, okay, whoa, that was not what I meant. Let me do that over. Then it's really hard for them because I find that my clients have a tendency to do something and then they feel like they have to marry it. I said it, therefore that's what I meant. And they'll die on something that they actually disagree with. And so I get them used to the idea of, okay, not okay. Don't stick to stuff you realize you didn't agree with or doesn't align with your values just because it came out of your mouth or just because you thought it. I include Aaron Beck's unhelpful thinking styles. I also talk about war room strategy from Priscilla Shirer, the practice of gratitude straight out of the Bible, and then Robert Ellis's ABCD model, also CBT as well. So, and there may be others I left off. This is just a smattering of examples that I included. I also include Vanessa's personal insights. So just little quotes and things. Like I was like, how do I describe this for the client? And so I just wrote it out how I would say it. So you run across anything where you're like, it doesn't quite sound right. Tell me, and I will look at it. Maybe it's a typo or something. I've not noticed that, but it's totally possible. And then additional resource material included. I use love languages, Myers-Briggs. I refer Emotional Intelligence 2.0, especially to my business-minded men. They love that one. I definitely refer the client to Texas Department of Family and Protective Services in the event that there's any violence going on or any other tendencies where they're unsafe, as well as the National Domestic Violence Hotline number and website, and the Timothy Center Sexual Addiction Recovery Program. So that's actually a new edit that I just put in recently because the material was written when I was an intern, and obviously I wasn't doing CSAT back then. There's a section in it, and I mentioned the Timothy Center Sexual Addiction right at the very beginning, but then I also mentioned it in the sexual dysfunction section, which is really, really small. It's like 2 pages long. The idea is just to get them the resources they need. We don't spend a ton on it in this material, but be prepared that that might come up. Obviously, when you have conflict in a marriage, there is going to be discourse that affects their sexual life. And then books that I refer to, The Emotional Intelligence, of course, Hold Me Tight, Sue Johnson, Love and Respect. I would love to add more resources. So if there are books that I should be adding on and plugging in wherever I can, please tell me and I will do that. These are just the ones that came to mind that I noticed when I was flipping through the material. And then, of course, I mentioned this before, most of the skills build on themselves. So starting at the beginning and working through is best. So basic skills, stop, wise mind, etc., builds up to more complicated kind of thinking, introspective kind of stuff, vulnerability, validation. And then it builds up to a section where it's more complicated, problem solving together and exercises. I have found that when they do the problem solving, sometimes it's effective for them to do it in my office, and I'll literally leave the room and check in with them as they're going through it to see if I need to facilitate to kind of break them apart, because you can hear them outside the room if it starts getting heated. At the beginning, they solve problems that are really simple, non-threatening, not a big deal. The very end, they do an exercise where they try and solve a problem they've never been able to solve before. And this is where it's effective to sort of sit down sometimes and facilitate, but I leave the room and I let them do it by themselves until it sounds like I need to enter, and I'll check in on them. How are you doing? Do you need help? And then every week there's homework. Each week the clients have a series of homework assignments listed at the end of the chapter and skills that must be practiced in order for them to become more natural, and we talk about that. My clients in general stink at the homework, and I pretty much assume they're not going to do it. They literally pull out the book 30 minutes before their session with me, and then they look at the homework. Almost always that's the case. That's okay. I let them stumble all over it. Eventually they figure out if we don't do the homework, it won't improve. They have to learn that on their own, and I obviously can't make them. I just assume they're not going to do it, so does it frustrate me? Do you have any questions about this so far? I cannot hear you.
I want you to come facilitate my couple at 4 o'clock today, and I'll just watch you do it. This is so cool, Vanessa. You sound so confident. I just love it.
I love this material. Very much a God thing because it wasn't on my agenda. I just sort of threw it together and create. I love lesson plans. I love organization. I want someone to tell me do step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I can roll with the punches and change things as needed for the client. But I love having something that's literally laid and mapped out for me, and you're going to do it in this order, and here are the resources here, because my memory stinks. So it's great to have it pre-planned and just something I can pull from. And I do use this material even for my individual therapists, like our clients. Today I sent chapter 7 to one of the clients because, and she's not married at all, but she's dating and having some issues that chapter applied to. And so I just sent it to her as an attachment. And then prayer. There's a small prayer included at the end of each chapter, some really short, some really long. And then basically what I suggest is just, I try to always speak over it, whether it's directly with them or just on my own in prayer ahead of their session, just to clothe themselves in the presence of the Lord Jesus Christ. Like just that they understand that they're not in this marriage by themselves. It's both of them and it's God. And so kind of bringing them back to that and helping them understand what's going on within their relationship. I think it's sobering for most of my clients to remember that. And then journaling. At the end of each section, there's also 3 or 4 journal pages, depending on the chapter. And I've seen clients use this in multiple ways. Some like to journal. Some are afraid to journal because they don't want the spouse to see the stuff they're journaling. So I'm like, you don't, maybe you don't want to do it in that book, but you can do that for taking, a lot of clients use it for taking notes in my sessions, stuff they say or we're talking about, they'll take notes in that section. They'll use it for mindfulness checks, like how am I doing this week? What's been dysregulating this week? Or a prayer journal, things that they find edifying for their relationship and give them strength. And then, okay, so where can you find this material? So this is, I put it in the Google Docs, and I wanted to definitely share this with you. So I wonder if you can see, oh good, you can still see this. In the folder, what you're gonna find are all of these different chapters, chapter 1, 2, and they go in order, including the pauses. I've also included for you, obviously you can see my presentations in there as well, but the credit page as well as the cover page. So if at any point you print this for some reason, you have it all, but also I get it printed through Office Max, I think, or Office Depot. And I can easily just share that account with you as well, and you can order it and just have it shipped to your location if that's the case. But so let's take a look at one of these chapters. So like chapter 1, hopefully this works. All of this should be hyperlinked. So when they open up the document, they should be able to just click on a section. Is it going to work in here? Doesn't look like it. On the original, I don't think it'll do it. Nope. All right, bummer. So on the Word doc, if you want me to send it to them, I can. The PDF version, everything's hyperlinked. So it just sends them directly to it. And all of the material, all of these links, see, those are still live though, so I don't know why the others didn't. I can play with it. All of these are live links. So as you can see, I included the Timothy Center's Sexual Addiction Recovery Program and the link and how to get connected to it, as well as the Safety Domestic Hotline site. Some of the clients are going to do this homework alone on their own and then talk about it with their spouse. And so this gives them kind of a safe place to go, oh, I was just looking at what the links were. They don't even have to take ownership of it so much. And it makes it so much easier for the client to explain why they were on the hotline for the domestic website or whatever, and their spouse sees it in the search history at some point. Thinking, well, remember that class we took? There was a link. I checked out all the links, and it kind of gives them an out and helps create a safe space for them. But this is basically how it works, and it just walks in order, page by page, and they just follow it. There's all the videos. So Inside Out, Riley, Mom and Dad's emotions video, which is hilarious. And it just goes through. Some of the charts have been created by me. Some of them were things I found online. I've gone through and I've cited all the photographs, so you don't have to worry about any of that sort of thing being like people claiming copyright laws or anything. It's all been fully vetted as far as that goes.
So I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
So are you actually reading this out loud with them where they're taking a paragraph, you're taking a paragraph? How do you cover this much material?
Okay.
Is it expected, you hope they read it in advance? Just how do you use this much text in the meeting?
Yeah, so it depends on the client. Most of the text is done during their homework time. It's not going to be done in session. Generally, what I do as the therapist is we open up to that chapter and we flip through to the different skills listed, and I explain what they are and how they work. So if they have a chance to ask, give them a chance to ask questions. Then they're going to go home and they do the homework, they do the material, then they come back in the next session and we review the homework and insights they've gathered during the week. And then we go back over the new skills for next week. And it becomes very dialectical. It's less talk therapy. And it depends on the client. Some of the clients can't do that. Like they just have to do the talk, in which case we do all the talk. If I can take them somewhere in the book that I can to kind of bring it back to those skills, I will. And then I'll assign the entire chapter for them to do on their own when they go home that weekend or whatever, before I see them the following week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I tried using this with a couple, and I just didn't know how to make the best use in the session with this.
Mm-hmm.
So you know it so well. I'm just reiterate what you said. You know it so well. You kind of talk them through to the skill area you want to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And then do you practice it in the session right there? You do a little
yes. So,
mini example?
Yes. Okay. So like, for example, right now we're looking at conflict patterns. Mm-hmm. They'll have their book open and I'll just go up to the whiteboard and I'll draw these I created cool little images for you to use, but I just, on the whiteboard, I do like little circles with like unhappy faces in them or whatever. And I just draw them on the board and we describe and talk about each of them. And I help them identify even what is your conflict pattern? Does a conflict pattern change in your relationship depending on the topic? That kind of stuff. And we just kind of talk through it. And I'll literally flip until I see the next skill. So like, let me go back to the beginning here. So like, for example, reset button, I'll start with this skill. This is a skill. Most skills are done in this kind of like thin font, large point writing. And I'll go through reset button, how to do that. What does that look like? And I even give them some script to try. I'm sorry, let me start over. That's not what I meant. Let me begin again. I'm sorry, I'm angry. I don't agree with what I just said. That's my personal favorite. I love it when people just say, I don't agree with what I just said. And so I kind of teach them how to do this. I help them pick their favorite. Which ones are they going to use? It's a little bit of a cope ahead so that the spouse even knows what it is their spouse is doing when they experience it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's weird. They don't know what you're doing. And it's generally encouraging to a spouse when they see the other spouse using a skill, because they're like, oh, this therapy stuff, they're doing it. This is good. So it tends to be encouraging because we practiced it and they know what it is. And then there's a bunch of different stuff here, primary, secondary. We just kind of flip through. I talk about dysregulation. What is that? What is it not? We do kind of an overview of that. I give them a chance to ask questions, but I don't dive too much into the words. The wording I want them to do on their own at home. This is part of their homework. And I tell them, write all over the pages, mark them up, make them your own, write in questions, put in doodles. I want to see you destroy your pages. That is okay. And it really gives them the freedom to just own it themselves and understand. It also kind of gets them in a habit of doing like a small quiet time, like how to journal and how to process on their own effectively. I'm trying to think. And then I'll just scroll, like we'll just go through like, okay, what's the next skill? Okay, yeah, let's talk about this one. This is what it means. Do you have any questions? And then we just move through it. And almost always we end up on rabbit tail tangents that have nothing to do with the material, and that is okay. And this is where they get to personalize it themselves. And we talk about whatever crisis this makes them think of, or what conflict this skill makes them think of, and I make it theirs, and I try to get it so that they can understand it. And we just scroll through till we get to the end. Then I assign the homework, and I explain to them next session, we'll review your homework. And then we're going to move on to chapter 2. And I ask them if they have any questions and if there's anything that we're leaving out that they haven't felt has been addressed, that kind of a thing. And every week seems to be a little bit different depending on the couple. Some weeks we can stick to the material really closely and some weeks not. And that is okay. The goal is to keep moving them through it. And I know we have done all the DBT skills when we get to the end of the book. And they get to take this thing home with them and it's theirs.
Yeah. Well, what I like about it is you are trying to do skills. This is something they need, but you've got to stay live with them. It's not just a classroom environment. And so it's just that kind of, I love hearing you say, we may need to skip to a topic that they just have to get to today. And I love hearing you say, guys, there's some building blocks. If we can just start these building blocks, I think you're going to feel better as we go in. So it's like you're regulating with them, but you know where you're going, or you have a plan for what you want to give them. And I just love that dynamic aspect of it. And I think because you know the material so well, you're really comfortable with that. And yeah, I would like to get more comfortable with that myself.
It helps when you've done it 100 times. I was not comfortable with it in the beginning, which is why this got written in the first place. I needed a script because I didn't know the material. Now I've got it all memorized, but I didn't when I started doing it. And so my couples respond well to this. They love being handled material. They feel like it gives them some structure and security. Couples seem to not like going into a situation where we're just going to complain about each other and it's different every week. They seem to want to see that some momentum is being made and following it in this order, and then giving them those check-in points. How are we doing? What progress has been made? What have you seen change? Really seems to make the difference for those couples. And almost always my couples leave counseling with me either going, we had so many big problems, we should have been in here years ago, or this has been extremely helpful, thank you. Like I get one or the other. And it's usually most of them feel helped and walk away very happy and satisfied with the process.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good feeling, huh? The mixture of serving them. Yes.
It is. Did you have a question? I can't hear you.
Vanessa, do you give each of them a book in the couple, or just one per couple? Or
No, I give one per person.
Per person.
As they are going to be doing their homework at different times individually. Doing some weeks, you'll look at the material, and I can't remember what week it is. I think week 4. It's easier to do with each other. And some of the weeks are, this is about you only, and you need to process through this stuff. And so they need to be able to go and do their own homework and journal their own stuff. And different things are significant to each person. So I find that that's really helpful if they have the ability to just take it on their own. Do it. Some people even do their homework in their car. I mean, like things like that. So they need to be able to keep it somewhere separate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have hard copies of this at the Timothy Center?
I do not believe so. I'm out of hard copies right now too, because I was editing and the last copy went out to the client and it's the old version. So
yeah, I don't think we do. How do you normally get copies? Do you email Liz?
No, I just know Jimmy's password and I order it myself.
I like it.
Yeah, I've been skipping that whole process thing. I just send a Liz message and say, hey, is it okay if I order it? I get permission to spend that $100 or whatever it is for all the copies. And she's like, yeah, send us the receipt. So I check in, but I just take care of it. And it's at Office Max. And so which case, what I'll do is I will update this and get the new full version in there so everyone can just get on there and order their own copies to be sent to their office if they need. Or you can simply just give the electronic copy. Like right now we're all online. Just email them the electronic copy of the PDF.
Now, do you charge them for the books when you send them? Because I know we have their card on file, and I ordered some books for clients, and I haven't actually asked Josh how to bill them for it, but I'm using a re-engage workbook that our church has, and I sent it to 3 couples. So anyway, that's another issue for me, but I just wondered if you were charging them for the books.
I have not, because prior to this, I was just running individual copies, and you don't charge them for copies and worksheets either. Mm-hmm. But I do tell them that I can only give them 1 copy. They lose the 1 copy, and I'll have to charge them for the second. And so maybe that's why they've not been losing it. I don't even know how I would charge them. We'd have to figure that out, but it's never happened. So just that, because and before we were footing the bill for all those copies. So I've not been charging them for it. I don't even know how I would do that. We would have to work through that if that's a decision made.
Vanessa, can you tell Liz to get with admins and order some more for the different offices so that you don't have to worry about it?
Sure, absolutely. Let me put this together because this one's been updated.
Yeah.
It's not the one that's loaded. So
awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vanessa, just send me whenever you're ready and we'll get it going.
Sounds good.
Yeah, Liz is on the call. I sent you an email, Liz, and then completely forgot. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah,
So have you been using this online then now, like in Google Meets and pull up a screen and do all that good stuff?
not in Google Meets, but I've been doing it on Zoom when we're going to do it to walk them through it. Or a lot of the couples I've been doing this with, though, still have the hard copy with them electronically or at home. And so I haven't had to do the electronic copy. Today was the first time I've ever emailed the electronic copy to anybody.
Okay.
But even in therapy, when I meet with my clients using Doxy, I email them my handouts. And so I have them pull up the handout while we're in session, and they look at the handout online while we talk through the skill.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Oh, at any point though, you just have questions or something you want me to add to it, please let me know. I love adding and growing things, in which case then when it all gets recompiled, I can just update the new version at Office Max as well. Because it's super easy to do. It's not a big deal. It's just time, which sometimes takes a little while. Any other questions?
So maybe mine is along the lines of management, client management. I'm really thinking about what you said about the narcissistic couple or the narcissistic person trying to, make the therapy a weapon. And now that we're doing it online, I guess your people are in the same place at the same time. Wow. I'm just thinking about what kind of referee you are with this. And that they're talking to each other and you're still there. I don't know, just any other management things you've learned along the way, especially in this kind of environment we're in.
Most of the couples who are dealing with that kind of thing, almost always the spouses are telling on each other via email. So I'm able to, without calling out the other couple, because of course they're home and they're in close quarters, so I'm not trying to escalate any conflict. I just assume, I get the mindset of, I assume that the narcissist agrees with me because they're intelligent just as I am, that kind of idea, because that's what narcissists do. So then I basically speak to the intelligent guy behind the narcissist and I explain to him the importance of not weaponizing therapy and how that shouldn't be a thing. And I basically just talk as if they agree with me, and they almost always act as if they do. I don't know if they actually do. It doesn't really seem to matter, but it does seem to help with the behaviors. If it escalates and the spouse is emailing me saying, hey, this is not getting any better, then we switch to individual therapy and I just make the reference. Like, I think you guys have some more individual skills that need to be worked on. And so I'm going to refer you to a different therapist. And I'll refer the wife to another therapist unless they've agreed that she wants to see me. But then I explain that once they get back together. And I think this is why I don't do a lot of the therapy where I see couples as individuals. If I can help it. I've got one couple I'm doing that with, but I started that well before I even knew that this was a problem. And it seems to work for them. But because I get so many narcissists and unhealthy marriages, I've sort of made that sort of a rule. I either see them as individuals or I see them as a couple and nothing in between. And so they have to make a decision. Am I going to be the individual therapist or am I the couples therapist? I have them decide. And then I make my referrals as needed if we're not able to do individual therapy. And at any point they seem to be making recovery and they feel like they've got some good skills under the belt and they want to come back as a couple, then we can do that. But I tend to be really firm on my boundary on that one because I've gotten so many unhealthy marriages in that way. And I don't want to be a part of that process. I'm not sure if you're talking, Michelle.
I'm just musing. So yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I'm thinking of several couples that they just totally derailed me, and I like, Liz consulted with me on one of my first ones I had at Timothy's, and I felt so ineffective. So I just vacillate myself on how much I want to control it so it doesn't get out of hand, and trying to teach them to talk without me there. It's just it's just the dynamics of being couple. I need to be in couples therapy counseling, how to make the most, learn more really. But thank you. This is awesome. I totally trust you. I love you. I'm just trying to glean what I can.
Oh, totally. And if any of you have any questions, like you're coming to a section in it and you're like, I don't know what this means or don't hesitate. Just send me an email and I'll walk you through it. It may mean that I need to edit something or change something that I wouldn't have picked up on. All right, well, if that's all, this has been wonderful. Thank you for letting me present this and show you the
Yes.
material and helping you access it.
Vanessa, thank you so much. I have emailed everybody the certificate as well as the evaluation. If you can complete the evaluation and send that back to me, that would be awesome. So we can have it for our files. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thanks, Vanessa. I can't wait to use this. It's exciting. So.
Good.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh, hey, Jennifer. How are you? What's up? Oh my gosh, she's huge.